Hi, thanks for joining us for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. I'm Chris Cooper. Rats, mice, and voles are unwelcome guests in the garden. Eagles, hawks, and owls help keep them under control. Also, there are many fencing options for the garden. That's just ahead on the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Family Plot. I'm Chris Cooper. Joining me today is Mary Smith. Ms. Mary is the Backyard Wildlife Center Curator at the Lichterman Nature Center. And Mr. D is with us.
Howdy.
Thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Thanks for having me.
Mary, we'd like to have you here.
I like being here.
Yes. So, raptors.
Yes.
Let's talk about raptors a little bit.
Okay,
right?
So when we talk about raptors, we're talking about our hawks, eagles, owls, and falcons. And these birds all have one major thing in common. Sometimes they're referred to as birds of prey because they're all carnivores.
Okay.
So they're going to be eating other animals. But specifically, the characteristics that they all share, which make them great hunters, are going to be their claws, which in these birds we call them talons. This is their most powerful weapon, and for most of the birds, it's what they use to catch and kill their prey. So not only do they have these sharp nails on them, but they're also really powerful feet. So if you make a fist and squeeze as hard as you can, that's your grip strength.
Right.
Okay. Probably the strongest person you know is about 100 pounds of pressure per square inch. But these birds, red-tailed hawks, are probably 200 to 300 pounds of pressure.
How about that?
But our bald eagles and golden eagles, probably 10 times stronger than the strongest person. They can do 1,000 pounds of pressure per square inch. And that's enough pressure to like crush a baseball.
Right. Oh my God, a baseball, how about that?
Yeah, so try that at home, try crushing the baseball.
That's why you wear these.
That's why.
That's right, that's why we wear these gloves, that's right. Yeah. But that's just one of their characteristics that make them great hunters.
Wow.
The second one is going to be their sharp curved beak.
That's cool.
Okay, so that looking at that curved beak, you know it's a meat eater, and they use that curved beak to tear their prey into smaller pieces if they need to. Okay. And then lastly, their eyesight. Most of these birds have really large eyes. They have really good eyesight, either seeing things at long distances or like our owls seeing in really low light.
Okay.
So those basically, the eyesight, the sharp curved beak, and the talons are the three characteristics that make a raptor a raptor.
All right, so what raptors can gardeners expect to find right here in the Mid-South?
Okay, so in the Mid-South, we have a lot of different types of raptors, and it doesn't matter if you're in an urban environment or a more rural environment, because we have raptors in both environments, and sometimes the same raptors. The most common hawks that we get here are red-tailed hawks and red-shouldered hawks. Then we also have another group of raptors that like to eat other birds, so they're bird-eating birds. One, your namesake, the Cooper's hawk,
is
one of our bird-eating birds. Then we also have falcons. Peregrine falcons, a lot of people know about those birds. Sometimes they will nest in big cities. But we also have things like the kestrel, which is a small insect-eating raptor, and things like Mississippi kites, which are eating a lot of cicadas. Those are really fun to watch. They're really acrobatic. Then, of course, we have our eagles. We have our bald eagles, which along the Mississippi, their populations are definitely increasing, and across the state of Tennessee and throughout the Mid-South as well. Okay. We also have golden eagles. Not as common here in the Mid-South, but you can sometimes get them in the wintertime on short distance migration. And then we have our owls, and we have a number of different owls in the region too. And so that basically is just kind of an overview of some of the raptors we have in the Mid-South.
Okay. Now, why would we want these raptors in our gardens?
That's a great question. So one, they're just great to see and to watch, but also they're going to be helping with rodent populations. So some of these raptors are eating things like mice and rats and voles, which I know a lot of gardeners don't like. Voles. And then also they're going to be eating snakes, like we talked about, some of them eat other birds. And most of the time these birds are taking animals that are sick or they're old, and so they're actually helping to control disease in populations and also just help control especially rodent populations.
Wow, which is good.
Yeah.
We definitely need that. All right. So how do we attract, these raptors to our gardens?
So there's a couple ways to attract them, and it kind of depends on what sort of habitat you have. But if you're in a more rural area, there are nest boxes that you can put up for some of our owls, like the great horned owl, or even our smallest owl around here, the screech owl. They'll readily use nest boxes. But for our hawks that we really want to come and eat some of our rodent populations, one of the best things we can do is not to use rodenticides or pesticides.
Okay.
Because those pesticides are going to travel through the food chain. So if a red-tailed hawk sees a rat that's moving really sluggish, that's easy prey. Unfortunately, those pesticides and rodenticides often move into the bird as well, and often will kill the bird. So that's the number one thing we can do to help protect the birds. But we can also provide some good habitat, so large roosting trees and nesting trees. I know somebody had a red-tailed hawk in their yard.
Yes, they have one.
Yep.
So I live in the woods.
Yeah. And so they are nesting in urban areas too. I read a story not too long ago about one of our owls, the barn owl. Actually, they've nested in Yankee Stadium before. So they can definitely utilize some of our urban habitats as well. But if you feed birds, if you maintain bird feeders for our songbirds, a lot of times you're also going to attract a Cooper's hawk as well.
Okay.
So they're not going to decimate your bird populations. They're just taking birds here and there. So that's another way to actually bring in those larger birds of prey too.
Wow, that's good stuff, Mary. So I guess now we're going to take a look at the owl.
Yeah, so we're going to take a look at one of our raptors that we can find here in the Mid-South and look at some of the really interesting characteristics that it has.
All right, so we have a friend with us, Mary.
Yeah, so I brought a barn owl, B-A-R-N.
Okay.
And I always spell that because we have two owls in the Mid-South, a barn owl like this one, and a barred owl, B-A-R-R-E-D.
Okay.
So sound very similar, but two totally different birds. And barn owls in the Mid-South, you're going to find these birds in more rural, open areas. They like fields or meadows or wetlands to do their hunting.
Okay.
But definitely a friend to the farmer and the gardener. These birds love to eat shrews and other small, they'll also eat mice and small mammals, but they have been documented, a pair of them, catching like up to 60 mouse-sized rodents in one night.
That'll get rid of your voles for you.
That's right.
good,
Yeah.
That's for sure. So I noticed, Mary, you have your glove on.
That's right. So like we talked about with raptors, this is an example of one of our raptors. They have really strong and powerful feet. And so in these talons, especially in barn owls, they have almost needle-like talons. So they can pierce and really hold on to their prey after they catch it.
Wow.
You can also see her eyes.
Yeah.
And so we talked about these birds have really large eyes and they see pretty well. Owls, their eyes are actually locked in their head, so they can't move their eyeballs around like we can. So that's why they have to turn their heads so often.
Okay.
Yeah. And their eyes are so big compared to their body size. If we had eyes that same size, we would have like baseball size eyes. Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah, so unfortunately for this one, and why she lives at Lichterman Nature Center, is because she is an injured animal that can't be released into the wild. It is against the law to keep these birds or even harass these birds. So she came to us because unfortunately she was hit by a car and she is blind. And cars unfortunately are one of the things that decreases their population, and it has to do with the way they see. So we have peripheral vision, we can see out of the corners of our eyes, but with these birds, because they have the round eyes, it's more like they have blinders on, so they don't see the cars coming until it's too late.
Golly. Man, that's good stuff. Good stuff. Look, so how do we protect our pets, from these raptors?
Okay, that's a great question, and we get that question quite a bit. Now, the one thing you have to remember, if you have a dog that's 20 plus pounds, there's not a raptor out there that can carry off that dog.
Okay. All right.
So our largest one is going to be our great horned owl, and so maybe 5 or 7 pounds is the maximum that bird.
5 or 7.
Yeah, and they probably can't fly off with that either.
Okay.
Now, if you have a small dog or kittens or puppies, the best thing to do is keep an eye on them if you do see raptor activity in your area whenever they're outside, and especially at nighttime, because it's our owls actually that are mainly the culprits
So
of.
it's the owls.
It is, yeah. The great horned owl, I would say,
coincidence.
is probably the biggest culprit of that. So keeping your smaller dogs and cats inside at night.
So watch over them at
Yeah,
night for sure.
yeah. But most of the time, these birds get blamed for stuff like that. But they're, a red-tailed hawk is taking something squirrel and chipmunk size, maybe a pound.
Okay.
These birds are really deceiving. This bird might look like it weighs 20 plus pounds. It weighs between half a pound and a pound and a half. And so if you think back to like elementary school, birds have hollow bones and feathers, so those don't weigh a lot. And then their bodies are actually pretty small. We'll see if she'll let me do this. So if you can see how deep of feathers she has. So right now is when I'm touching her body. So she's like a finger deep of just feathers. So actually pretty light birds, so they're not going to be able to take something that's 5 pounds. It's 5 times as much as they weigh.
How about that? Very great lesson. We appreciate that. I always learned a lot from you when you're here. So thank you much.
Thanks
and
for having us.
thank you too, baby. Thank you. There are a number of gardening events going on in the next couple of weeks. Here are just a few that might interest you. All right, Mr. D, let's talk about the kinds of fencing.
Okay.
Would you like to start with that?
Well, first you need to try to determine what you're trying to keep out,
Okay.
or keep in,
Or keep
you know,
in, right.
whatever the case might be. But here in the Mid-South, probably the main critters that folks want to keep out of their garden or landscape are deer.
Yes.
Maybe rabbits if they have vegetable gardens, maybe raccoons because they can create a lot of problems around the house. And you need different kinds of fences for all of these critters. Probably not, there's no one fence that would work for all of them, with maybe one exception.
Uh-oh. What
No,
was that?
it wouldn't work.
Oh, it wouldn't work?
The raccoons would get
Okay.
over. The raccoons would get over. What I was thinking,
All right.
a privacy fence that, like a lot of folks have a solid wooden privacy fence.
Okay.
That would might work for deer simply because they can't see
Okay.
on the other side
I see
of
where
it.
you're going.
If it's tight enough where they can't see through there, you have overlapping wood or lapping wood.
Okay.
Because even though there may be something on the other side that smells real good, like your vegetable garden or something like that, they tend to since they can't see what's over there. Maybe they're thinking that there may be something dangerous over there, so they don't tend to jump the solid wooden fences, even though they're shorter than they could easily jump a 6-foot wooden fence. The deer can jump between 8 and 9 feet high.
Yeah,
And they can jump probably 15, 20, sometimes 25 feet long.
wow.
That wide a spread.
Right.
Now they can't jump 8 or 9 feet high and 15 or 20 feet wide. They can't do that. They can either jump
That'd be
high or they can
incredible.
jump long.
Right.
So, a wooden fence, a solid wooden fence in a landscape situation might do a pretty good job of keeping out deer. Rabbits can burrow under a wooden fence, so a combination of a wooden fence with woven wire or expanded wire sunk down from 3 to 6 inches into the ground, buried 3 to 6 inches in the ground, that combination would keep deer and rabbits out,
okay.
and it would probably protect your garden.
Okay.
It wouldn't be cheap, it'd be pretty expensive, but that would
a
probably
lot of
do the
work,
trick
too.
for you. Now the raccoons could climb that. They would scramble up the top of that 6-foot wooden fence and jump over. So that would take care of deer and rabbit. That's pretty expensive. If you have a large garden or if you don't want to spend that much money, a real tall, either metal or poly.
Wow.
They have poly deer fencing that you can make 8 to 9 feet tall. They would need to be at least 8 feet tall. That would keep most of the deer out.
Most.
But again, that's very expensive because you got to put posts and you got to do all that. and the posts have to be fairly close with that, a metal fence or a poly fence. Now, cheaper alternative, and this is one that we use out at Agri Center, and I even had to use it for the first time up at Murray State this year to keep rabbits and raccoons out of some of our plots, is electric fences.
Okay.
You can go to a farm supply store or probably any of the hardware stores have fairly cheap, just wire. It's a real thin wire, and you can use plastic fence posts that you push into the ground that are only like 30 inches tall. If you do that for deer, you need at least 2 strands, in my opinion. The top strand about 30 inches tall, the lower strand about 15 inches tall. The lower strand will keep the little deer out, the fawns out, and the bigger strand will, I mean, the deer's gonna walk up there and stick their nose to it, probably. And it does a pretty good job, especially if you lean it out at about a 45-degree angle. And that's what we do at Agri Center, and it pretty much keeps most of the deer out of the our plots out there. Now, you might get by with 1 strand about 30 inches tall. That would keep the big deer out. But the problem that I've seen with just 1 strand is that the fawns will walk underneath it, and then the mother's going to blow through there if she needs to, and she's going to tear your fence all to pieces.
Now, what about the raccoons, though?
Well, the raccoons, electric fence
Electric
works most of the time for raccoons. You need a shorter fence. It needs to be ideally 2 strands, one about 6 inches off the ground and one about 12 inches off the ground. I've had success. We had some success. We kept raccoons out of sweet corn up in Murray State this year with 1 strand at about 12 inches off the ground, and it kept them out. And this is a planting where last year we had a 100% loss.
Wow.
Sweet corn. They ate every bit of it. and this year, as soon as we took the fence down, we took the fence down during harvest when we started harvesting it, and of course the harvest lasted a week or so. And as soon as we took the fence down, it was like they were coming in, and we were getting some, and they were getting some. We were getting some, and they were getting some. But I think we out harvested them. But the electric fences work really well, and you might not have a power source.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
Handy, like we don't have a power source at Agri Center or at Murray, and so we use the solar-powered chargers.
Okay.
And you can buy those at any place that sells fencing materials, and they're fairly inexpensive. And you have to charge them first. You know, connect the batteries and then charge them, and for like 24 hours before you hook it up to the fence. And if you do that, pretty good little shot. You know, if you don't believe me, just grab a hold of it.
Out.
You can grab it.
How do you maintain those electric fences, though? I mean, of course, you have to keep the grass from growing up around it.
It's the new generation chargers will shock through grass.
How about that?
The chargers will. Many of them will say that they'll shock, 10 miles of fence. And so they will, but it's better to keep the grass, and we use herbicides.
Okay.
We just spray herbicide Roundup under the electric fence. You can weed eat.
Right.
But if you don't worry, if you get some grass that gets up in it a little bit, it's still gonna run right through there. It'll shock right through there. So they have really improved in the past few years. But that's and you can if it happens to be in your backyard, you don't have to buy a charger. I mean, you don't have to buy a solar charger. They have chargers that you just plug into a 110 outlet, and they'll do the trick too. That is really probably better. You don't have to worry about it. You have a lot of cloudy days. Sometimes your solar powered charger can get weak on you. But that's the cheapest route to go, is with electric fence.
Electric fence. All right, appreciate that, Mr. D. It's good stuff. Be careful when putting up that electric fence stuff.
That's right.
We'll be careful.
This time of year, which is in September, is the best time of year to dig up and divide your spring blooming or summer blooming perennials. And right here today, we're going to be digging up this really overgrown, spread out big canna. You want to come out a little bit from the crown so you're not chopping through the part that you want to keep. Some of the other varieties you can dig up are daylilies, verbena, phlox, yarrow. There's a lot. Anything that blooms in the spring can be dug up and divided this time of year. Oh yeah, look at there. We got 3 big nice stalks. Now I did kind of cut through one of them here, but that's okay. You know, you've still got a good viable crown here going on in a bunch of tubers. So now you're ready to transplant that to another area of the garden. And because by this time of year, you know, the top has kind of done its thing more or less, you can go ahead and cut this off. Now I've got some clippers, or you can just do this. There you go. Now you're ready to put it in another part of the garden.
All right, here's our Q&A segment. Mary, you jump in there and help us out, all right?
All right.
All right, here's our first viewer email. I'm not going to be growing in my garden for 1 year. What cover crop should I use in the winter and the summer? Winter and the summer. This is from Hal. Okay. So thinking along the right lines, but he wants something for the winter and the summer.
Winter is very, very common because
Yes.
a lot of folks will
winter's
plant
very
cover
common.
crops in the wintertime. I've got a list of them, and I think I went to Oregon State University
Okay.
and got what they recommend.
Okay.
And
this is their extension
and
site.
a lot of the plants you're going to recognize. Alfalfa.
Yes.
That's a winter. Of course, alfalfa you could also plant in the spring. Austrian field peas, it would be for the wintertime.
Winter.
Plant those in the
That's for the
fall.
winter.
Barley, you can plant barley in either the fall or the spring, and it will grow. Buckwheat, this is spring and summer one, so that would be one that you would plant for summer.
Okay.
Fava beans, I'm not really familiar with fava beans, but you can plant them in early spring and late summer, so they would work as they'd be a legume, and they would work in the summer. Garden peas, I would be wanting to eat those.
Right.
That's a cover crop that you could eat. Yeah, but again, they're fall. That'd be for
Right.
a winter cover crop. So there
Right,
you are.
you're right.
Plant you some garden peas, and you got a cover crop and a food. Oats, spring and fall. Annual rye would be it'd be planted in the fall
that.
time, and that would be a good winter cover crop. Hairy vetch
about that
is
one? That's big time
that's
here.
a good fall one for winter cover, and then wheat.
And wheat.
Which you can plant
know a lot
in the
of
fall for winter cover crops. So there you are.
That's a good list. But the vetch is something I know a lot of folks
The
around here do.
vetch
And
is
they
a
till it under,
perennial.
of
Yeah,
course.
and that's what they're recommending with all of these is actually tilling them
Yeah,
under.
till
They're
them
not
under.
recommending them. I guess you could no-till them, go in there and burn them
That's
down.
interesting. I didn't think about that.
Right.
All right, there you have it, Mr. Howell. Thank you for the question. Here's our next viewer email. What is this plant? I think it's a weed that I inadvertently introduced into my garden. It grows from spring till frost and is about a foot tall with a dinky, fuzzy flower. Thank you. This is Miss Victoria from Memphis. I looked at that. If you look at those leaves and you look at she called it the dinky, fuzzy flower, I think it's mulberry weed.
Could be. I
Because
don't
it
have
starts
a
off
clue.
in a cluster like that.
Yeah, probably what
Yeah,
it is.
in a
but
little cluster,
I couldn't
right
from
in
that.
the
I couldn't-
crotch.
yeah.
Yeah, so I kept looking at that and looking at the leaves, down low. It's mulberry weed. That's what I think that is, Miss Victoria. If that's
Probably.
the case, that weed is tough to control because it produces a lot of seed. Do you know about mulberry
I
weed, Mary?
do.
Tell us a
I
little bit
do.
about it, huh?
Yeah, so you'll start finding it everywhere.
Uh-huh.
It's very prolific.
Yeah, very prolific. It starts developing seeds very young, in this life stage. And it
One of those
produces a lot
invasive-
of seeds.
One of those invasive. So.
Oh man, it can cause a lot of problems, and it pretty much came up with the ornamental plantings. You used to see it a lot in flower pots.
Man, we have introduced so many bad plants into this country.
Yeah. So Miss Victoria, I think that's what that is, mulberry weed. So it will produce a lot of weeds. That looks like it's a foot tall. Yeah, it's already produced a lot of wheat seeds.
I'd pull
So
those.
yeah, do be careful with that, and get rid of that. Okay. Here's our next viewer email. We like Blue Lake green beans. We planted the bush variety and they did well this year. We want to consider planting the pole version next year. Are there any differences between bush and pole beans we should prepare for?
You need a trellis.
You're gonna need a trellis, Mr.
something
Guy.
for 'em to
That's
run
for
on.
sure. Because that thing is gonna climb.
They'll climb, and you probably will have more beans because they'll continue. The harvest. You can spread the harvest out.
Yeah.
You can produce more per square foot
Right.
than with the bush type beans.
Because the bush type is pretty much all at one time, isn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah.
They pretty much they get ripe all at once, and you harvest them and you're done. But with pole beans, it's kind of spread out over length of time. But that's pretty much it. But you need a pretty strong trellis system.
Yeah,
one that
make
can
it strong.
understand, that can withstand summer thunderstorms and wind and things like that.
Right.
And
And a little weight. Yeah.
little weight.
Yeah, a little weight. All right, so there you have it, Mr. Guy. Yeah, they're both good though.
They are.
Don't you think so, Mary?
Yes.
Good. Pole beans are good too as well. All right, Mr. D, maybe we're out of time. It's fun as usual.
As always.
All right, thank you much. Remember, we love to hear from you. Send us an email or letter. The email address is familyplot@wkno.org, and the mailing address is Family Plot, 7151 Cherry Farms Road, Cordova, Tennessee 38016. Or you can go online to familyplotgarden.com. That's all we have time for today. To learn more about raptors or garden fences, head on over to familyplotgarden.com. While you're there, you can watch over 1,000 gardening videos or ask us your garden questions. Be sure to join us next week for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Be safe.